Hey, storyteller. Are you neglecting to incorporate one or more of the five senses in your story's descriptions? Many writers focus on the visual and auditory sensory details almost exclusively, leaving their descriptions feeling flat and diminishing reader engagement. In this week's writer coaching session, I'll show you how to use specific word types and figurative language to incorporate multiple senses into a scene so you can help readers maintain their focus on the story, deepen their immersion, and strengthen their connection to the characters. Plus, I have a few bonus tips to help you ramp up your descriptions even more. Welcome, I'm Bridget from B Squared Writer Coaching. I'm an author, editor, and your story coach, here to help you make your story powerful, polished, and publishable so you can move readers and help them experience your character's adventure with maximum emotional impact. First, I have a gift for you just for visiting my channel, a list of more than 30 filter words to cut from your story. One of the biggest pitfalls writers encounter when trying to describe sensory detail is the tendency to use filter words like saw, heard, felt, watched, etc. For example, he saw the sunset paint the sky red. Filter words create distance between the reader and the character's sensory experiences. This list will help you identify and eliminate them from your story. To download it, just click the link in the description or visit b2writercoaching.com/filter. That's the letter B, the number 2, writercoaching.com/filter. And be sure to stick around till the end of the video so you won't miss this week's power up, a super practical action step you can use right now in the story you're working on. Before we get to all that, if you'd like to learn more about filter words, how to recognize them, avoid them, and eliminate them altogether from your stories, check out this video linked above. I'll also link it in the description. But wait till after you watch this one. Since vision often dominates our sensory experiences in real life, sight-based sensory detail is the easiest to write, with sound coming in at a close second. Taste and touch may creep into our descriptions if we're really paying attention to sensory detail, but what about smell? Though the sense of smell is a powerful conveyor of emotion and is closely tied to memory, many writers leave it out altogether. I completely get this. I have to work really hard at remembering to include smells too because, well, I have no sense of smell. Yeah, that's right. I was born without it. And I don't think about it. So I have to be super intentional about this. My BFF/co-author, Rebecca, has helped me on several occasions to describe a smell that I've never experienced. This might be a good tip for you as well when you're trying to describe smells. I would tell her what I was trying to achieve, and she would look in her kitchen cabinets and try to find a combination of spices and ingredients that I may have tasted in the past and use that as a reference point to describe the smell. Since remembering to describe sensory detail isn't always an easy thing for us to do, I and many other writers will often add those details in during the editing phase. That way, you don't get bogged down during the writing process and trying to remember all these things all at once, and just get the story on the page and then insert those things later when you're revising. So, how can we describe the senses in unique and colorful ways? Well, I'd like to call this first section of tips nouns, verbs, and adjectives. Oh my. We can use those specific word types, but not just any old noun, verb, or adjective. We want to be strategic in the ones that we choose to describe sensory detail. When we use powerful verbs, specific nouns, and creative adjectives, readers will experience the sensory detail along with our characters. But what do I mean by these terms? First, we'll tackle specific nouns. Each of the five senses can take multiple forms, expressed as nouns, which can provide more description than the name of the sense itself. What do I mean by this? Well, for instance, a smell can be either an odor or a fragrance. Instead of saying the smell of the flowers, we could say the fragrance of the flowers. Or instead of the smell of the manure pile, we could say the odor of the manure pile. Fragrance and odor each convey very different connotations or feelings, if you will, associated with the smell. For more examples, a sound can be either a noise or a melody. A taste can be a flavor or a tang, and so forth. Often, a sensory detail will remind us of its source. For example, violin music, where violin is a noun, and yet it's being used sort of like an adjective here to describe what kind of music. Other instances could include body odor. So we talked about odor a few moments ago. Well, body is a noun, but it's used as sort of an adjective here to describe what kind of odor we're talking about. We could have hickory barbecue flavoring. Hickory and barbecue are both nouns, but they're used in a descriptive role here to describe the flavor. We could also have silk sheets. Silk is another noun, which is used like an adjective to describe the sheets. When using nouns, be specific, choose ones that are descriptive, and be creative. We can also use powerful verbs to convey our sensory descriptions. When I mention powerful verbs, I'm talking about verbs that are both active and descriptive. We want to avoid passive verbs like state of being verbs or other types of verbs that link the name of the sense with an adjective. For instance, the fruit was sweet. Well, was is a state of being verb. It's very passive. We're telling the reader that the fruit was sweet. We're not really adding any descriptive elements to it. We're not showing the reader how sweet the fruit is. We're just stating it. There's no action going on. Another instance of this could be the soup smelled delicious. Well, smell is not normally considered a passive verb. To smell is an action. However, it's not being used as an action verb here. It is being used more similar to a state of being verb. It's what we would call a linking verb in this case, where it's linking the soup with delicious, the adjective that describes it. So the act of smelling is not taking place. No one's sniffing anything, but smelled is just, as I said, linking those two, the soup and the deliciousness of it. On top of that, smelled in this case is acting as a filter word. So what can we do instead? Well, by definition, verbs are supposed to be action words. So let's use active verbs instead of passive ones in our descriptions. And also use verbs that are in themselves descriptive. So we don't have to add adjectives or adverbs to this in order to convey what we're trying to describe. A strong descriptive verb can indicate whether the effects of the sensory detail on the character are pleasant or unpleasant, gentle or violent, soothing or uncomfortable, etc. For example, a fragrance can waft into a room. So waft would be our active descriptive verb there. Or an odor can sting someone's eyes. Very different descriptions there of the sense of smell. Notice how both indicate the impact that this particular smell has on the character. A melody may lull a character to sleep, so our powerful verb there would be lull, while a noise may slam into the character's eardrums or clang through the room. We can also use creative adjectives. Now, I mentioned trying to avoid using adjectives and adverbs and instead using active descriptive verbs, but that doesn't mean adjectives are always bad. They're not. Adverbs, however, well, yeah, we really want to avoid those, but that's a topic for another video. There are adjectives that we can use which will enhance our descriptions. That is if we use creative adjectives, not just the run-of-the-mill sort. What do I mean by creative adjectives? These are adjectives that do more than just describe the general quality of the sensory detail. Like powerful verbs, they may also show how the sensation affects or impacts the character. For instance, a soothing lullaby or a deafening crash. Soothing in this case is an adjective, and we are seeing its effect on the character. It's relaxing or calming the character. Whereas a deafening, there's our adjective, crash would startle or hurt the character's eardrums or make it hard to hear anything else afterwards. Keep in mind, however, with adjectives, less is more. In this case, adding multiple adjectives doesn't increase the power of the description. It has the opposite effect. 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. 1 plus 1 in this case equals 1/2. It diminishes the power, cuts it in half. I mean, it's not an exact mathematical formula, but you get my meaning. If you find yourself using multiple adjectives or in general describing something 2 or 3 different ways, just pick one and stick to it. Are you finding this helpful so far? I hope so. If you are, consider hitting the like button so that YouTube will show this video to more writers just like you. Besides using powerful verbs, specific nouns, and creative adjectives, we can use figurative language to express our characters' interactions with sensory detail. What is figurative language? Well, this is things like metaphors and similes. These are strong writing techniques for evoking emotion. In a simile, we use either the word like or as to create a descriptive comparison. For example, someone describing tea might say, "It tasted like summer, warm and lulling." Really, can something taste like summer? Does summer have a flavor? So this one's called figurative. It's not literal. You could say something tastes like chicken, and it literally might taste like chicken. However, in this case, we're using a sort of flowery type of language to paint a picture in the reader's mind. In a metaphor, we use an unrelated item, event, or action to substitute for the thing being described or part of the description. For example, the aroma grabbed him by the nose and pulled him into the kitchen. Well, did the aroma really grab his nose? I mean, an aroma can't grab anything, right? So this is imaginative and a creative way of saying the smell was so tantalizing, it compelled him to go into the kitchen. And what a powerful description. Figurative language can clarify, deepen, and expand our writing. Be careful, though. Some metaphors and similes have become cliche, while others may make the description too subtle or vague or ambiguous if your reader isn't following what exactly you're talking about. In either case, you risk distracting readers or weakening the writing. So put a unique spin on cliched or common metaphors and relate real or tangible objects to the sensory detail you want to describe. And now for those bonus tips I promised you. Consider why you want to describe a particular sound, smell, taste, or texture. That will determine the mood you set with your descriptive words. Remember that difference between a fragrance and an odor? And if you're describing one sense, you can borrow words associated with another. For example, a sharp smell, warm colors, piercing light. Well, sharp for a sharp smell is a word associated with touch. So is piercing in piercing light. And yes, even warm in warm colors. So there we're using the sense of touch to describe two visual details and a smell. And for the third bonus tip, brainstorm sensory details that may reflect or contrast the character emotion you wish to convey. An example of sensory detail used to contrast emotion is something the film industry does often, where you'll have sweet music like you might expect to hear in a child's room played in the background when a horror scene's about to happen. Of course, we can't play music in the background for our books, but that's just one example of how we can use these contrasting sensory details. And definitely beware of using filter words. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to download your list of filter words. Remember, just click the link in the description or visit b2writercoaching.com/filter. For this week's Power Up, read through a scene from your story to discover whether you are using sensory details other than those related to sight and sound. If not, add at least one, or better yet, two other senses to the descriptions in that scene. Use specific nouns, descriptive verbs, and creative adjectives to make those sensory details powerful and unique. To find out how you can make sure filter words are not weakening your descriptions, check out this video. And let's power up your storytelling.